Hello and welcome to another edition of the Brian A. Joyce Report. I'm Senator Brian A. Joyce, and I have the honor of representing you and your family along with the towns of Avon, Braintree, Canton, East Bridgewater, Easton, Milton, Randolph, Sharon, Stoughton, and West Bridgewater in the Massachusetts Senate. The purpose of this program is to keep you up to date on what's happening in the legislature, as well as to discuss the vital issues that affect your lives every day. We'll also introduce you to some interesting guests who are some of Massachusetts' most important decision makers. Today I'm delighted to be joined by current independent candidate for governor, Jeff McCormick. Jeff grew up in a blue-collar neighborhood in upstate New York. He went on to graduate from Syracuse University with a Bachelor of Science in Biology, studied molecular genetics, and earned an MBA in finance. While he was there, he was a first-team All-American lacrosse player, and he was captain of Syracuse's national championship team in 1983. After coming to Boston, Jeff founded Saturn Partners, who grow and finance early-stage companies. These include the popular Boston Duck Tours, Twin Rivers Technologies, biodiesel company in Quincy, and the e-marketing firm Constant Contact in Waltham. He's acted as the co-chair of Bostonians for Youth and is a founding board member and lead sponsor of the Sean McDonough Charity for Children, which serves at-risk youth. He is also a vice chair of the City Center for Performing Arts and a four-time Dana-Farber marathoner. Jeff and his wife, Christine, have 3 children and live in Boston. So thank you for coming, Mr. Independent.
Oh, right? Thank you for having me.
So I've always been somewhat curious why we didn't have more. Are you independent or unenrolled?
Well, it's technically unenrolled.
Unenrolled, right. So common vernacular is independent, right?
That's right.
But because someone once upon a time formed a party called the Independent Party, we go by unenrolled. So given that the great, if it's not, is a majority of voters in the state?
53%.
Right. So we've gone from a plurality to now a majority are unenrolled, right. And yet we don't have independent office holders. Do we have any? We have a couple of state reps maybe?
There are very few people who want to run as an independent, and part of it is because of the party infrastructure. But in my case, I wanted to be free of the status quo and free of the ties that prevent really the best decision making for all people.
And I'll tell you, I mean, I'm a registered Democrat, I'm a Democratic office holder, and there's not really as much party infrastructure as I think is conventional wisdom. So it really has always been curious to me that we don't have more independent candidates. So good for you. And tell me, you have an impressive background. You were a year ahead of me in college. You were in 1983. You went to Syracuse, our rival from Boston College.
That's right.
Apparently you're taller, better looking, and a better athlete, and perhaps brighter than I. So I read all that, but I still like you.
Oh, thanks.
So tell me, what inspired you to run for governor?
For 27 years, I've been building companies and creating jobs. And when you do that, you also solve problems along the way in energy, healthcare, education, finance, a number of different industries, at Twin Rivers, in Quincy, companies like that. And I wanted to take that same skill set and apply it to the public sector, because there are a lot of problems, as you know, and we can be more efficient, we can get better outcomes, we can use technology better than we do, and I think the people of the Commonwealth deserve that. So
there's a trend lately now of folks getting in to races and running for the first time as governor, as U.S. senator, whereas in the old days you used to see folks that would run for their local school committee and for state representative and state senator and then on to governor. Do you feel like you have the political experience in addition to your business experience?
Well, if you think about what we need right now, if one of the biggest issues truly is that of job growth, and the vast majority of job growth comes from small businesses, which is what I've been doing my entire career, is growing very, very small companies to, in many cases, quite substantial companies. That's the skill set that we need, I believe, more than anything else at this period of time right now. And in a booming, robust economy, maybe it is a different skill set that we need. And also using technology, because our Commonwealth is way behind on our adoption of modern day technologies, cutting edge technologies.
Are we behind? We're behind the private sector. Are we behind other states?
We're behind both, which is interesting. And in some cases, we should copy what other states are doing And others, though, we should just leapfrog everyone because we have such a rich environment when it comes to technology development in this Commonwealth.
So I must say that I chair the bonding committee in the state Senate, and Jeff took the time to come in and meet and speak with me about an information technology bond bill that we were in the process of writing and passing. And one of the fun facts I think I pointed out to you when I met with the folks from the Information Technology Division of the state government, they had, I think there were fewer than 12 employees who were less than 30 years old. That a lot of their technology, to prove your point true, dated back to the time when you and I were in college, that they were dealing with COBOL and BASIC. And
it's written on code that you and I learned.
Yeah. So
right.
And what about now, you mentioned party infrastructure. How do you propose to convince, give me a path to victory for you as a candidate for governor. Is it to get those unenrolled to go your way and then that's enough to win? Or
well, if we could take the R's and D's off our chest for just a second and you ask people, and there have been many polls, what do you want in the next governor? Believe it or not, it's not the policy decisions that are driving people. They want someone who has private sector experience. They want someone who has created a lot of jobs. They want someone who has solved problems. They want someone who's not tied to the status quo. And preferably, they'd like someone from a blue-collar background that can just relate to everybody. Well, that's who I am. Now, if they want someone who's been in the political arena for 30 years, that's not who I am. But someone like that most definitely does not have my experience in growing jobs.
Who would you consider a role model?
If you're asking about the political arena or not, I have a lot of role models in life, people that do take risk and kind of push the edge of the envelope in the technology sphere, and there's a number of them around Boston, Desh Bondi and people like that. But as far as politically, a guy like Tim Kaine, who was governor of Virginia, now he's a U.S. Senator, who, when he was there, it was the best state to do business and the best state for education. That's a pretty cool 1-2 punch, right? And wouldn't we like to be both of those in Massachusetts? Okay,
and then what would be your, who would be the lieutenant governor if we have an unenrolled?
So Tracy Post has already been named. So Tracy and I are running as a ticket. She's she's a councilwoman from Yarmouth, and I wanted that because I wanted someone who. So
she's already been named.
So she's already. So the way it works for an independent, you run as a ticket. So it's Tracy and I running together.
Okay.
And I wanted someone who has that community experience, working with school boards and planning committees and zoning boards and everything else, right? So she has deep experience there. And I also, frankly, wanted someone who understands that the entire Commonwealth is not just the Boston MSA. Mm-hmm. There's the Cape and the islands and all the gateway cities that we really need to think about a sensitive plan to rejuvenating those areas.
So you mentioned technology. What are some other areas you'd like to focus your efforts?
Well, healthcare is a big one. It's 42% of the state's budget. We definitely need to get more efficient about delivering healthcare. We have tremendous healthcare capabilities, but we're also the most expensive state in the country, and the U.S. is the most expensive country in the world. So having the highest per capita healthcare cost is not something that we can sustain forever. So we have to get much smarter about it, emphasize primary care.
So actually you could wed those two priorities, right? The technology and
absolutely.
The delivery of healthcare.
There's no question. And with primary care, if you take care of people better earlier, you actually save a lot of money downstream because it's mostly chronic disease.
So I have the benefit of being married to a very bright woman, and she makes this point often when we're talking about curing disease. Mm-hmm. She likens it to putting more money into ambulances at the bottom of the cliff as people are continuing to walk off the cliff and get injured or sick. And she, politely suggests, why don't we do more to keep people from getting sick or from going off that cliff, and through better nutrition and education and preventative medicine.
She's absolutely right, and it is so well studied that if you do invest earlier with the best health care, And ironically, it could be a little more expensive up front, but then you save tremendous amounts of capital downstream. And of course, it's typically government, whether state or federal, that owns the problem at the end of the day, just because of the way our systems are set up.
So as a practical matter, it seems to me one of the challenges that will be facing the governor that wants to invest maybe more up front in healthcare, and you can make a very similar argument in terms of education. I mean,
Sure.
the data is overwhelming that
Early childhood education.
early childhood education results in better education and has extraordinary long-term benefits societally and for the economy, for the individuals. But at the beginning, you need to make that investment, right? So you need to make that investment in early childhood education, in early preventative health care. Meanwhile, you still have the expenses of the sick and the existing educational infrastructure. So how do you do both?
Well, the good news in healthcare, it starts to pay for itself very quickly. In education, a 4-year-old isn't a productive tax-paying member of society for a long time. And we'd like to get our kids off a scholarship, right? So it does take a while. What you have to do is you have to look for efficiencies everywhere else you can. Things like incarceration reform. I mean, there's tremendous savings in other places. Healthcare, though, because it's such a big piece of our budget, and it does pay for itself very quickly because of the way chronic diseases work. That's something, again, when just marginal savings, it's hundreds of millions of dollars. So that's where you have capital for other necessary expenses.
So focus on technology, healthcare, education.
Education. Energy is another big one. We're the 5th highest energy costs in the United States, which is hurting small business growth.
So the next governor is going to have to decide what we're going to do with the solar and our other alternative forms of energy. How much of a continued subsidy we'll give from the public coffers? Really, that's what's driving this tremendous growth we've seen in solar energy in Massachusetts. So what are your thoughts there? Should there be a heavy public subsidy? Should it be driven more by the private sector?
By market forces, let's say. Well, I think you constantly need to innovate, and you want ultimately alternatives to be somewhat comparable when you put everything into them. And we built, again, Twin Rivers, which was biodiesel. I mean, it was the largest biodiesel company in North America out of Quincy, which was terrific, right? But that wasn't the end solution, and we knew that. In the case of the United States, we have a tremendous amount of natural gas reserves in the U.S. And there are issues. Well, do you build a pipeline or not? It's it's billions of dollars. It cuts through all kinds of towns and you can have wetlands issues. You name it. Well, you can also truck it. So we actually have a company that does that. It's a very simple solution. We'll just truck it to these customers. They save about 30% of their energy bill. That kind of thing is a really smart solution.
So is that for commercial?
It can be commercial. You could actually do it in municipalities if you wanted to do it, although we don't right now. Hospitals, colleges, universities. Who doesn't want to save?
The point is maybe think a little bit outside the box.
Yeah, think out of the box. And that's what we're so good at in this Commonwealth. We just apply ourselves to, okay, how can we take an opportunity that we have today, maybe not make a permanent decision. It doesn't have to be a 30-year decision. Let's do something that makes sense today and incrementally get to where we want to go, which is more renewables.
So as you look at recent governors or, at least, relatively recent that viewers would remember them, I suppose, who would you look at and say, I'd like to do a little bit about what he or she did? That's someone I could admire. You mentioned Tim Kaine in Virginia, but who have you, agreed with or disagreed with here in Massachusetts?
Well, I mean, there's, every governor tried to take the Commonwealth in somewhat different directions. I think when you look at how Governor Patrick tried to make some of the agencies work together, that is a huge issue. Wherever I go with any of these providers around the Commonwealth, they say that the government just doesn't do that well enough. And again, that becomes in part a technology issue, right? I believe the EBT card scandal and obviously the Health Connector was all about technology, and clearly the DCF issues, some of that was about technology, right? So that needs to be taken to a whole new level. There are some of the things Governor Romney was doing. He was moving the Commonwealth in a very positive direction, but I wish he had been here for another term, that he could have just finished some of the work that he had initiated. So again, there's a lot of opportunity here to continue to make positive changes, and also to go after areas and issues that we seem to have not really headed there as hard as we should.
So do you look outside of Massachusetts? You look at now Maine elected an independent
That's right.
governor, right?
Yep, Angus King, two-time governor. Yep.
Now U.S. Senator.
Yes, that's right.
And where else have we seen this happen? In
Rhode Island.
Lincoln Chafee.
Yeah.
So now Angus King was I think had been a Democrat. Chafee had been a Republican before they became independents. So it's happened. It's just not happened here. Why? How long have you planned on running for governor? Why governor? Why? You talked a little bit about why as an independent. I mean, you must have really had to wrestle with this. It makes it a little harder for you, right? It makes it harder to win.
Yeah, and actually Angus had me down for a long dinner in D.C. At the end of last year, and he said, it is harder to win because, again, you don't have some of that support from within the parties, but people understand the message, and Democrats and Republicans too. It's not like this message is just focused at 53% of the unenrolled. There are Democrats that, they want someone with stronger business skills. There are Republicans that certainly want someone with my kind of business skills, of building companies, real growth companies, and also has, the social views that I have.
Talk a little bit about those views.
Well, which are essentially, it's about equality. It's let people live their lives.
So
when you say and justice for all, it's justice for all. I mean, I really think we ought to take that to heart. But we have to run things well. And Angus's comment to me was, running might be more difficult. Governing as an independent is a lot easier because you're so much less threatening to everybody, because you're just trying to get people in a room, recognize the facts for what they are, the problems, the issues for what they are, or the opportunities for what they are, and say, we've got to make a decision here. The stuff that goes on in D.C., that's just unacceptable, right? We've got to be better than that. We're smarter than that. Let's come together, let's analyze everything, and let's come up with a great program, again, that serves everyone in the Commonwealth.
Well, it's a fair point that, first of all, our state legislature is nothing like Congress. I mean, I would, my gosh, have no interest in working in an environment where people just hated each other. I mean, I have some very good friends that are Republicans, very good friends that are Democrats. Sometimes we'll disagree, and but we can disagree without being disagreeable, and we can. At the end of the day, we're friends and colleagues and coworkers, and you look at just the vitriol, the hatred, really, in D.C. It serves nobody well, but it also creates more opportunity for us on the state level, because there is such gridlock in Washington. We in the state level have the opportunity to step into that void and serve as the laboratories and see what works in terms of addressing our common problems, but some unique to Massachusetts, but generally the same issues: good schools, good jobs. Try to get as much bang for the buck as you can from the tax dollars that we have. But let me just shift gears a little bit more, because you're new to the statewide scene. Talk a little bit about your upbringing, your values, your family, and just give voters an opportunity to get to know Jeff McCormick a little bit better.
Well, thank you. I grew up in upstate New York in a very modest environment.
Who did you root for? Yankees or Mets?
I was actually not a big Yankees or Mets fan. When Thurman Munson died, that was the end of my...
You were a hell of a baseball player yourself.
I was a good baseball
Where'd you
player.
play?
Well, again, just in upstate New York, just growing up, as everyone did. We just played sports year round.
What position were you?
I was a first baseman and outfielder. I'm left-handed. And growing up there, I also grew up next.
So you liked Thurman Munson more than Carlton Fisk. This is going to be a problem.
Okay, well, this is.
Remember what happened to Martha Cookie, right? When she was on the campaign trail.
I understand. But my older brother actually went to Boston and got to see a Red Sox game, and from then on, it was, hey, I was a Red Sox fan. For no reason. There's no pro baseball in upstate New York. I grew up next to a reservation though, an Onondaga Indian reservation, and they were big lacrosse players, so that's how the lacrosse figured in the whole thing. And attended Syracuse University on a lacrosse scholarship, won a Scholar Athlete Award, which paid for graduate school, which was terrific to a poor kid. I mean, it was, phenomenal. They get paid to go to school and grad school. And then moved to Boston with $800 in my pocket and started my company 20 years ago. That was 27 years ago. I moved here 20 years ago, started a company and just started growing companies and creating jobs and solving problems with these companies. And it's a tremendous skill set to always, be able to not just see what's there, but to see some things that aren't there and to get very creative and to constantly be bringing experts in and just, people that are really out of the box thinkers, really solutionist in their approach.
So you continuing with your private sector endeavors during the campaign?
Well, I have partners, and I'm still on the board of some companies, but my companies are very late stage. I haven't taken on any new companies because new companies are like having 4-year-olds. I mean, it's just a lot of work.
So you have, and then what happens? You win, you have to divest yourself of all that stuff?
Yeah.
Is there actually a requirement to do so?
Well, when you say divest yourself, as far as the work, my partners will take over the workload and advisors we have to those companies.
Okay. So we're filming this, truth be told, before the primary. We're going to run this after the primary. I'm going to go out on a limb and say you're going to be facing Charlie Baker and Martha Coakley in November. So how are you going to distinguish yourself from those two candidates, from the Democratic nominee and the Republican nominee?
Yeah, I think with people that are looking at Martha Coakley, again, she believes job creation is the biggest issue. At least she said that in debates and forums that we've been together on, and that's just not what she has done in her life. And Charlie has been, he's worked for 2 large bureaucracies, and again, they're not the job creators in the Commonwealth. So I think we need someone who, again, has an ability to create jobs, who has done it before, who has lived paycheck to paycheck. People will certainly be able to relate to me given my background. And I think we need to innovate as well. So that's the difference.
Do you anticipate having to elbow your way into debates, or you think you'll have a seat at the table, all 3 of you?
Well, we've heard from certainly one of the sponsors that I'm definitely going to be in it, but they don't even know who the coalitions are that are going to host the debates yet. So, we'll see where we are. But I think as people hear the message, they're going to say, this is a serious guy. This is not some flaky guy or some big ego who's just doing it because he's bored with his day job. I mean, I love the work I do, but I also recognize what I've done here and my opportunity to serve a lot of people.
Are you enjoying the campaign?
I love everything about it but one thing.
Raising money.
No, it's being away from my wife and kids as much as I am. That's a hard one for me because my kids are 10, 11, and 12, and that's it's pretty fun ages.
And where do you live?
We live in Boston.
In Boston.
Yeah.
So you can make it home most nights, right? So you're not staying overnight, but it's just long days.
Yeah, it's just very, very the hours I keep. I don't see my children much.
And are they involved in the campaign at all?
A little bit here and there. They've marched in some parades with me. They helped gather signatures, which, as you know, for our governor is 10,000 signatures. That's a lot of signatures. March in different places. Embarrassed at times when I.
My children, I have 5 children, and they've grown up in parades and.
Oh, good.
When most normal families are enjoying the 4th of July weekend on the Cape or something, we're marching in parades and
passing out the candy, right?
Randolph or Stoughton, it's a different life, but it's usually a lot more enjoyable if you have your children participate. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes to look into the camera and just reintroduce yourself to the. I think there's 6 or 7 million people watching this broadcast, and just tell them why they should vote for Jeff McCormick, the independent candidate for governor.
Hi, I'm Jeff McCormick. I've been working for 27 years to build companies and create jobs. I've done it in areas like education, energy, healthcare, biotechnology, software. I think we need a governor who is free of the status quo, quite frankly, isn't afraid to challenge the status quo, because we've got to get back to basics and start solving some of the problems. We have issues in education, we have issues in healthcare, we have issues in energy, and if we don't get at these areas right now, it's going to get much more difficult in the future. And I think it's my responsibility and the senator's responsibility, people of our generation, to get everything moving in the right direction so we basically don't hand all these problems off to our kids. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today, and thanks so much for having me on the show.
Excellent, thank you. You know, I get questions sometimes when I have candidates on. I'm asked if this is someone I'm endorsing or supporting. It isn't, but I have great respect for each and every candidate who really puts their name on the ballot, puts themselves on the line in order to serve the public. So I am very impressed with and very appreciative that Jeff McCormick has taken the time to join us here today, take time out of his busy campaign schedule. Jeff's an independent candidate for governor, and please give him every consideration. Thank you for joining me, and we'll see you again next time.
Thanks, Senator.